Hello, my name is Daryl. I'd like to welcome you to Volume 1 of this very special L&L Publishing video series. I'm going to show you literally hundreds of different sleight of hand techniques, but I might as well tell you at the very beginning, I'm not exactly going to show you every single move that's ever been created. Quite honestly, some of them are not so good, some of them are pretty old and outdated, and also, I don't happen to know every move that's ever been invented. I do know hundreds of moves, and I'd like to share those with you. If you've ever had the dream of performing masterful sleight of hand with playing cards, I think you're in for a treat. Now, if you've ever been frustrated trying to learn difficult sleight of hand moves from a book or poorly written instructions in lecture notes or magazines, you're in for a pleasant surprise. You see, my goal is to demonstrate and then to teach you a wide variety of these special techniques that are used to create magical effects with playing cards. In other words, card tricks. Now, the wonderful thing about video is you actually get to see the technique performed. This will also be very helpful when it comes time to learn the technique yourself. Now, over the years, I've learned hundreds of moves, and I've had the pleasure of sharing these techniques with magicians all over the world. They, in turn, have shared their secrets with me. So right now, we're going to have ourselves a magical move marathon. Now, some of these moves are very easy. You'll learn them in just a few short minutes. Other techniques might take hours and hours and hours of practice and dedication. Now, obviously, I have no way of knowing whether you're a beginner or a more advanced student, so what I'm going to do is play it safe. We're going to start at the very, very beginning. First, I'd like to talk about a few terms having to do with playing cards in general. This is a playing card. This is the face of the card, or the front side. That's the side that tells you what it is. All of the cards are different so that you can tell them apart. These are the index corners, the upper left and the lower right from the performer's point of view. And these are the spots, or the pips. This is a non-bordered deck. Other decks are bordered, like this, has a white border. The non-bordered, or the overall pattern on the back, is very good for concealing sleight of hand moves. The white border deck is particularly good for reversing cards. If you have a card secretly face up in the deck, it's very hard to see, whereas if you have a card face up or secretly reversed in an all-over non-bordered deck, it's very easy to spot. So you have to be very, very careful. There are 4 different suits in the deck. These are diamonds, these are spades, there's clubs, and hearts. There are 13 values in each suit: the ace, the 2, the 3, the 4, the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. These are known as spot cards or number cards. These are the court cards, or the face cards, or picture cards: jacks, queens, and kings. Also, most decks have 1 or 2 jokers, sometimes a regular joker and an extra joker, but sometimes in Europe they have 3 jokers. These are the various deck positions. If the deck is face down, this would be, of course, face up. This is the front end, or the outer end, away from the performer. This would be the inner end, or the end closest to the performer, the left side and the right side, the top of the deck, the bottom of the deck, also the face of the deck. So if a setup requires that you have a special card third from the face, of course that would mean third from the bottom or the face of the pack, like this. This is a poker-sized deck. Poker cards are 2.5 inches across, as opposed to a bridge-sized card. This is a bridge card. This is only 2 1/4 inches across. Okay, now it's time for a trick break. A perfectly ordinary deck of playing cards. They're all here, they're all different, they're well mixed. In fact, you can have a spectator thoroughly shuffle the deck before you begin this mystery. One card is selected from the pack in the fairest possible way. You'll have to trust me on this. Any card can be selected. I'll just sort of cascade through and take one at random. How about, say, that one, for example. Remember what the card is? I promise I won't look. The spectator can then place the card any place into the deck. They say stop, they toss it in, it's lost, absolutely no control. And even the spectator can shuffle the deck at this point. There's only one way to find it, and that of course is to use psychic power. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to deal the cards one at a time face up. I want you to concentrate on your card. When you see the card that you have in mind, just think the word stop. I will read your mind. You ready? Concentrate. Just think stop. Now remember, any card is selected. It's placed any place back into the deck. The spectator thoroughly shuffles the deck. All you do is you deal through one at a time, no sleight of hand, and the spectator is to think stop. In theory, I'll be able to read your mind. Think stop. I hope it hasn't vanished. What was that? I'm sorry, I was distracted. I heard you think something a moment ago. Could it have been in this general area here? Maybe the 4, maybe the king, maybe the 3. It's one of these 3 cards. One of these 3 cards. Concentrate. Concentrate. Ladies and gentlemen, think stop. Believe it or not, this trick is very, very easy to do, and the conditions are extremely fair. I can explain exactly how this trick is done with 3 words. One-way backs. One-way backs. Allow me to demonstrate. This particular deck is a very subtle one-way back. It's called the Bicycle League back. If you look in the middle, you'll see there are 3 wings. One wing is pointing directly towards me. The other 2 are sort of pointing outward. And the setup is to have all of the wings facing in the exact same direction. That's the setup. That means the cards could be thoroughly shuffled with the Hindu shuffle, the overhand shuffle, the riffle shuffle. In fact, strip shuffle or running cuts, it doesn't matter. All of the cards are still facing in the same direction. All you have to do now is have any card selected returned to the deck so that it's facing in the opposite direction. And there are several ways to do this. One way is to do the pressure fan. Say, pick out any card you'd like. The spectator takes the card out. When you close the fan, you turn the deck over end for end. That means when the card goes back into the pack, it's the only card facing in the opposite direction. It's very easy to find. Another method is to hope that you get lucky. In fact, this is what I do very often. I'll have a spectator take any card from the deck, doesn't matter where it's selected from. I say, look at it, pass it around, show it to several other people in the audience. Hopefully, in the handling of the card from person to person, the spectator will turn the card over end for end. If you'd like to be a little more sure, here's a very subtle way that always works. The card is removed from the deck. It's facing in the same direction as the rest of the pack. Then you say, look at your card, remember what it is, and pass it around to everybody around the table. Well, as the card is being passed around the table, by the time it comes back, it's actually facing in the opposite direction. Another method is to simply turn the deck over after the selection has been made. You say, pick out any card you'd like, square up the deck, hold it up high, let everybody see it. You just turn the deck over end for end. Anneman had a very clever method. This is very subtle. Take out any card that you'd like. It's taken from the deck. You say, I'm not going to hold the deck as the card is returned. In fact, sir, would you mind helping me? You take the deck. You hand the deck to a second spectator. That turns it over in the process. Then when the selection is returned into the pack, of course, it's facing in the opposite direction. Very, very clever way to go. There are several different one-way backs. Allow me to show you them one at a time. There are many different types of one-way backs. Some are very, very obvious. Some are very subtle. Let me show you the obvious ones first. That's pretty obvious. If you have a deck of these cards all facing in one direction and you have another one in the opposite direction, even non-magicians would notice the difference. These are all very obvious one-way decks. In fact, this is how I first learned about the one-way back principle. When I was a schoolboy, it was a very standard trick. Of course, these same tricks are much more deceptive when you have a very subtle one-way back. And I have a few of those as well. These are some of the better subtle one-way backs. One of my personal favorites, in fact, this was one of Anneman's favorite. Remember, it's the very center, the 3 wings. One wing points away or towards one of the ends. The other 2 wings point closer towards the corners. This is the angel back squeezer. These are very subtle one-way backs. If you look very closely, in fact, you'll have to get your own angel back squeezers to check it out. But Up in the corners, there's a little tiny small wiggle, and on the opposite corner, it's a thicker, wider wiggle. So that's very subtle. The bicycle holiday backs, these are also very subtle one-ways. Tally-ho circle, this is a great one. It looks like a regular back that could turn either way. Normal people don't notice the difference, but if you look very, very closely, there's a little flower in the middle. The top of the flower, there's sort of a little wide space, sort of a V shape. But the bottom, there's a very, very thin line on one side, and it's a thicker line on the other side. Very, very subtle one-way back. These are the aristocrat cards. If you look at this little border, of course you can't see it here, I suppose, but it's very, very small, little L shape. It's basically a highlight or a gleam, but all around the edge there's a little border that has a little L shape. And of course, on one side the L is upside down, on the other side it's right side up. This is a very subtle one-way back. In fact, I bet I can let you look at this card for an hour. Unless I told you exactly why it's a one-way back, you probably wouldn't notice. Because believe it or not, you could turn it over end for end. The design is the same in both directions. It's not the design, it's the fact that this card was printed just a little bit off-center. If you check out several decks of cards that are normally two-way backs, you might notice that the border is wider on one side than the other. This is a very subtle one-way back. This is probably the most subtle of all, the B card. Most magicians have no idea that B cards are one-way backs. All of them are not. Only a few. You have to go through a few decks maybe to find a one-way B back. But if you look on one side, in this particular case, there's a diamond, and it's a very small piece of a diamond on one side and a larger side on the other. So if you have all of the cards facing in one direction so that the left side, say, shows less than half a diamond, and the right side shows more than half a diamond, it's a very, very subtle thing to have any card selected, put back in the deck once the deck has been reversed, shuffle them as many times as you like, and as you deal through them one at a time, while the audience, by the way, is looking at the face-up cards, they're looking here to think stop. All you do is you secretly look at the back of the deck. Okay? Also, there's a little something we call one-way faces. These are one-way faces. Every deck has 22 one-way faces. The ace of clubs is obviously a one-way face because if it's this way, it's different from when it's this way. This way, the pip is upside down. The 7 is also a one-way. In fact, all of these, just put the majority of the cards, in this case the 8, the top 5 pips are right side up, the bottom 3 are upside down. The ace of spades is, of course, the most obvious one-way face. The 7, the top 5 are in one direction, the bottom 2 in the other. The 3, the 9, for the 9s, just look at the middle pips. The 5, the exact same thing. Look at the middle pip. Make sure that's facing right side up as opposed to upside down. In fact, the only diamond that's a one-way back, or the one-way face, is the 7 of diamonds. Just put the 5 diamond pips on the top, 2 at the bottom. So the 7 of diamonds is the only diamond that's a one-way face. Otherwise, we have all of the hearts, all of the clubs, and all of the spades. The 7, ace, 8, 5, 6, 9, and 3. All of these. So there's 22 one-way faces. Also, what I mentioned about the subtle one-way backs and the off-centered printing, that very often applies to the face of the deck as well. Oh, here's an obvious example. If you look very closely, you'll notice that this ace of diamonds is printed off-center. See how this diamond index corner is very close to the edge, whereas the opposite side, there's quite a distance. So if you set up your deck so that all of the faces are in one direction, you can do one-way back principal tricks with the face-up cards. So these are one-way faces. Now let me show you some very unique cards, very special cards. This is my own personal private collection. These are known as gimmicked cards, or gaffs. This is a very simple gaff. It's a blank-faced card. It has a regular back, just a blank face, as opposed to this one, which is a blank-backed card. Regular face, no back. This, of course, is a double-backed card. Same color on both sides, red, red. They also make them blue, blue. And once in a great while, you'll come across a trick that uses red on one side, blue on the other side. That's a red-blue double back. This would be, of course, a double-faced card. Here's another double-faced card, but this one has the same face on both sides. This is called a same both sides card, or an SBS card. Here's a nice one. What do you think of that? This is a misindexed card. Some call them double enders, a Hofzinser card. If you hold it this way, it looks like a 7. If you hold it this way, it looks like an 8. Regular back, double ender, misindexed card. Here's another version of the misindexed card, made famous by the 3-card Monte effect. Here's another one, another divided card, spades on one corner, clubs on the other. With face cards, if you have misindexed cards, you can show, of course, a lot more of the surface. So you hold it like this, you've got what looks like a queen of spades. Of course, this way, looks like queen of clubs. Oh, here's a nice one. What do you think of that? Half 6 of clubs, half 4 of spades. Ooh, what a surprise. 10 of hearts on the other side. That's a real gimmick. Here's a fun one, also, misindexed card. King of spades on one side, king of hearts on the other, and on the other side, what a surprise. Ace of spades. Here's one of my personal favorites. If you ever press a face and a back card together and squeeze, you can end up with the face and the back on the same surface. So that's kind of fun. Here's another interesting card I came up with years ago called Shattered. You just take a 10 of spades, you snap it onto the table, and it shatters, as opposed to this one, which would be probably called a Fallen Pips card. And, oh, the world-famous 3.5 of clubs. Not to be confused with the almost as famous 14 of spades. So there's just a few of the interesting gimmicked cards that you can buy at your favorite local magic shop. Next, I'd like to show you some very special cards, unusual cards, somewhat unique. First, we have the mini card, the miniature card. A nice thing about the mini card is it's just exactly as long as a poker-sized card is wide. This comes in very handy with certain tricks. This card is known as the jumbo index card. This is good for doing card tricks on stage. That way the audience can see exactly what the card is. This is a jumbo card. Something about the jumbo card is this just happens to be 4 times the size of a bridge card. So if you take 4 bridge-sized cards, they will match up exactly in size of the jumbo card. Oh, lots of other special cards. This would be an astrology card. Well, let's look at all of them. Astrology card, there's another jumbo index card. This is a good one. Letter cards, alphabet cards, number cards. These are ESP cards, the square, the wavy lines, the star, the cross, and the circle. Lots of very good card tricks that you can do with ESP cards. Also, I found something in Las Vegas. These are slot machine cards. All kinds of different tricks that you can do. Just use your imagination. You'll come up with some very clever routines. So those are the slot machine cards. Tarot cards are excellent for performing card tricks. In fact, sometimes you can take a very simple, almost hokey card trick, but if you dress it up with presentation and you use a tarot deck, sometimes it's very, very strong. Here's a fun one. This is the crooked card from the crooked deck. You can have lots of fun with this. And this is one of the newer cards. I just found this a few years ago. It's a transparent card. This comes from Japan. All you do is this. Transparent cards. So you can learn lots of card tricks that are normally done with regular decks, but you could spice them up with your presentation using a special deck. Gimmicked cards are great, but they're very, very expensive. You have to print thousands and thousands of them to make it cost effective. So one dealer in Japan, Mr. Ton Anosaka, he came up with a very clever idea. He printed gimmicked card stickers. What you do is you take these little stickers, you peel off the wax paper, and you stick the sticker onto the back or the front of a playing card to make up your own gimmicks. This is a nice one, half blue, half red. He has a whole collection of different stickers. You just peel it off, stick it onto the card, big bunch of cards on one, a king of diamonds halfway vanished. This is called the many of diamonds, a 14 of clubs, 15 of spades. This is a nice card. The pips are sort of spread out, so you could take a regular 6 of diamonds, spin it, and the centrifugal force will cause the pips to sort of go to the outside edges, as opposed to this one where all the pips come into the middle. This is another version of the shattered card. You just snap the ace of spades and it shatters. Fallen pip card, a 20 of hearts. Ooh, and here's one I've never seen before, a 78 of spades. Once in a while, you're going to want to perform a card trick on stage with jumbo-sized cards, but it just happens to use gimmicks. They're pretty hard to find, but if you search around, you might actually find some dealers that sell jumbo-sized gimmicked cards, like a 14 of spades. Here's the classic 3.5 of clubs. Here's a nice card trick. The Tante from Tonnan Osaka. It uses some very interesting gimmicks. Here's another nice one. Half six of clubs, half six of hearts, and another gimmick like this. There are some dealers that actually sell full Fako decks, which is a full deck of jumbo cards with all kinds of different gimmicks. You can mix and match them and come up with all kinds of wonderful routines. Wow, I'll bet you had no idea there were so many different types of playing cards. Believe it or not, there are more, but we'll talk more about that when the time comes. Right now what I'd like to do is to talk about some of the technical terms in Magic, what we call the nomenclature. It's very simple, but it's also very important. If I started to rattle off these technical terms and you didn't happen to already know what they mean, chances are things could get very, very confusing. And I'm speaking from personal advice. When I first got a personal computer, first time I tried to use it, I remember I looked at page 1, section 1, it said, step 1. Do a cold boot. I had no idea what a cold boot was, but that's okay. I had the booklet in my hand. I looked up in the index, and it said, cold boot. See page 1, section 1. That was it. I couldn't even get started, and it was very, very frustrating. Well, I don't want that to happen to you, so before I start going into the explanations of these technical terms, I thought I should just give you a general overview to begin with. The technical terms, of course, are very important. Here are some of the basic ones. First of all, a block. A block of cards is very simple. It's just a group of cards. It could be a thin block, a thick block. It doesn't make any difference. But any group of cards is a block. Cutting the deck. Cutting the deck, very, very easy. Many different ways to do it. One way is to hold the deck on the table. Usually after a riffle shuffle, you just pull the bottom half off, slap it on the top. That's a standard table cut. Also, another version of the table cut is to take off about half of the deck, cut them, and complete the cut. Very often, two different people are doing this action. One person will cut, the other person, the second person, completes the cut. Also, you can hold the deck in your hands, do a standard table cut, like this. Sometimes you do it from the center. That's a good one. A center cut. Just pull a group out of the middle, slap them on top. Now the Scarney cut is actually a center cut first and then finishing with a standard cut. So you hold the deck like this, pull a group out of the middle, slap them onto the top, then finish with a standard table cut. Also you have multiple cuts, more than 2 packets. One way is to hold the deck like this from above and just cut off about a third, another third, and the final packet. Also you can do this by the ends. This is basically a Hindu shuffle grip. You just take 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3 like this. Also, you can do a pivot cut or a swing cut. You take the index finger, lift off a group, pivot them into the other hand, and complete the cut. Not to be confused with the swivel cut, which is basically this. You pivot or swivel a group out and cut it like this. Now you could do this with multiple cuts. Multiple pivot cuts or swivel cuts, multiple table cuts. Another standard multiple table cut is to cut the deck into 3 or 4 groups and then reassemble them in a different order. Another thing about the multiple table cut, this action, is known as stripping the deck or the strip shuffle. Now, shuffling the deck. Shuffling the deck is any procedure that rearranges the order of the cards, whereas opposed to cutting the deck is rearranging blocks of cards. One standard shuffle is the overhand shuffle. Basically, this action here. Face up, it might be a little easier to follow. You just take small blocks off the face into the left hand. The Hindu shuffle is the same idea, just a different grip. You hold them by the ends, the left hand peels off small blocks and drops them into the hand like this. There's a thing called the Asian shuffle, which is very popular in the Asian countries. It's like a Hindu shuffle, just a different grip. You hold the deck like this, take small blocks like that. Of course, like I said before, the strip shuffle, or running cuts, is nothing more than stripping small groups off the top onto the table. Also, there's the ever popular riffle shuffle, where you cut the deck into 2 groups, interweave the cards together, and square up. That's the riffle shuffle, or in the hands. The usual card table procedure is to shuffle the deck and always follow with a cut. Now, squaring the deck is a very simple action. It's just pinching the corners to square up the pack. Also, if you happen to have the deck in your hands, you want to square the deck, you just square them up from the ends and the sides. That's known as the squaring action. Dealing the deck, dealing the cards one at a time, you can deal them face down like this. That's a standard deal. What this does is this rearranges the order of the cards. It reverses the order. If you deal the cards one at a time face up, this is called a stud deal. Believe it or not, that maintains the order of the cards. So if you just happen to have the cards in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 order, you deal them one at a time face up, put them back on the top. They're in the exact same order. A group deal is this. You deal the cards in small packets or small blocks. That's the group deal. If you do the group deal face up one at a time, small blocks of cards, they stay in the same order. One more deal, the necktie. Any standard dealing action, the necktie grip is when the hand is held closer to the tie. So if you hear of somebody doing what they call a necktie second, that means they're holding the deck up like this. A setup or a stack is any group of cards that's in a prearranged or a specific order. Sometimes a one-card stack would be something as simple as one card in a particular location, like one card on top or one card on the bottom. That's considered a one-card stack. A small group stack would be like 4 aces on the top or 4 aces on the bottom. That would be considered a small slug, a stack, or a stock. A full deck stack, as you may have guessed, is the full deck, all 52 cards, prearranged in a very specific order. That would be considered a full deck